Okay, remember they're changing my voice. This is the much anticipated video about lightning. And I'm going to need several videos because I'm going to have to put things into context a bit more than usual because the explanation, the scriptures, the individual verses are a bit more complex than usual. Okay, so first we're going to talk about Exodus 19. If we have time in this video, we'll go Psalm 77. If we have time still, we'll go Psalm 144. Okay, those are the three chapters I have in mind right now. Now, we're going to see how the mountain, Mount Sinai, is associated with the cloud, with the trumpet, with the furnace and smoke from the furnace. Okay, and this is pretty key here. It's associated with the abyss by default. And I think that I'll probably have to explain that in another video. Okay, and also lightning and thunder. Right, thunder is the noise. Lightning is the light in the sky that strikes. Okay, and it's important that you make that distinction so you don't disassociate and miss some of these details that are very key here, that are not something you can afford to miss. Okay, Exodus 19. It's only 25 verses. Here we go. On the first day of the third month after the Israelites left Egypt, on that very day they came to the desert of Sinai. After they set out for Rephidim, they entered the desert of Sinai, and Israel camped there in the desert in front of the mountain. So they're in the desert again. You know, the Bible is by Bel, whose name is also Baal, whose Greek equivalent is Zeus, and whose Egyptian equivalent is Set. And Set is a deity of storms, chaos, and being desert, right? Being the walking dead, the principles of evil, rape, right? Rape by deception, death in a sense, right? He's a demonic war god who wages war in the absence of the spirit of justice, according to the pagans, and in Christianity, in the absence of the spirit of God in reality. And since his followers are the ones who compiled the Bible in Greece and Rome and in the Middle East, okay, Set is therefore superimposed on Horus. It gets very confusing as you try to understand it that way, but at the same time it fills in a lot of missing blanks. Okay. So again, they're camped there in the desert in front of Mount Sinai, which Paul in Galatians 4 said that Mount Sinai of this world is from below. So the abyss can be interpreted as the actual nation of Israel, you know, in the physical realm. You know, Israel as a nation, as a worldly nation, as a secular worldly nation. Okay, and Mount Sinai is the abyss, is one way to interpret it. Another way to interpret it is it's an idea that covers everybody like them. Everybody like those who look at things in terms of the material. Okay? And we've seen in recent years the Jews talking about Jewish materialism. Okay? And a lot of Jews were communists and secularists. Okay. Again, this is just mainstream history. If I talk about the Klan, am I anti-white? Okay, this is just the truth. Okay. Where are we here? Okay. Then Moses went up to God, and the Lord called to him from the mountain and said, "This is what you are to say to the descendants of Jacob, and what you are to tell the people of Israel. You yourselves have seen what I did to Egypt, and how I carried you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself." Now, obviously, they weren't literally on eagle's wings. Okay? Has to do with a certain spirit, has to do with flying through the heavens, has to do with being a bird of prey, you know, to prey and a bird of prey, and these things are connected. Divine and diving are connected. Okay? Now, if you obey me fully and keep my covenant, then out of all nations you will be my treasured possession. Although the whole earth is mine, you will be for me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are the words you are to speak to the Israelites. Okay, so now notice this part is what all the Jews always forget. This part is key. Whenever they say something like this, it says, "Now if you obey me fully and keep my covenant." Okay, God said to David the same thing, and so on and so forth. Said, "You must obey me and keep my covenant." Abraham understood it. Isaac understood it. Jacob understood it. Moses understood it. He knew that only if they obey God, whether God's talking to him from a donkey or a burning bush or a cloud of smoke or through the prophets, that only if they obey God could they have the kingdom of heaven as a people? And the prophets would eventually start to explain to them that because of their sin, that they would be divided. And Jesus would eventually say the kingdom of heaven was going to be taken away from you completely because you keep murdering the prophets, because you're going to murder Jesus. And you sealed the deal by doing that. And if you are to go to heaven after that, a people that performs its works, a person or a people or the king of a people, the essence of a people, okay, is the only way to heaven. It's that simple. I'd love to hear your counter argument. There's many Jewish people who are aware of these arguments. Some of them agree that that's the valid interpretation. I'd imagine all of them agree because they never present a valid and viable counter argument. Just trolling at best. All right. So Moses went back and summoned the elders of the people and set before them the words the Lord had commanded him to speak. The people all responded together, "We will do everything the Lord has said." So Moses brought their answer back to the Lord. The Lord said to Moses, "I am going to come to you in a dense cloud, so that people will hear me speaking with you and will always put their trust in you." Then Moses told the Lord that what the people had said. Okay, so he said, "I'm going to come back to you in a dense cloud." Again, is he literally saying a cloud? No. I've gone over this many times on my other channels, Poison Christ and Fume Christ is Poison, I believe. Okay, it is figuratively speaking, right? It's a collection of righteousness. And we're going to get to that because that's what this video is about. That's what this video series is about. You know, it's going to be a several part series. It's about lightning. Okay, again, this is about lightning. We're putting the lightning in Exodus 19 into context. The lightning is not literal. It hardly is literal, if at all. The cloud is not literal. The water, the living water of God is not literal. Jesus walking on water is not literal. Turning water into wine is not literal. We'll get to that. So again, he said, "I am going to come to you in a dense cloud so that people will hear me speaking with you and will always put their trust in you." Then Moses told the Lord what the people had said. And the Lord said to Moses, "Go to the people and consecrate them today and tomorrow. Have them wash their clothes and be ready by the third day, because on that day the Lord will come on Mount Sinai in the sight of all the people." Now remember, people were afraid to look at God. Was this a literal event? No. In the sight, in their mind's eye, but in reality, right? They'd be able to sense God. What's a good example? You know, if you hear music, right, and you can't see it, okay? If you see something, you can't hear it. So people would have this kind of sixth sense that is a logical and almost scientific truth that they would detect that God is there. It's what a spirit. How do you detect a school spirit, right? It's a similar way that you detect a school spirit is how you would detect the Spirit of God. It's a similar way that if you go to a wedding and you see a certain formal atmosphere, that you would detect that atmosphere is a similar way that you would detect God. But yes, the idea is it's more subtle than that. Okay. Put limits for them around the mountains and tell them. Put limits for them around the mountains and tell them, "Be careful that you do not approach the mountain or touch the foot of it. Whoever touches the mountain is to be put to death." Whoever touches the mountain is to be put to death. Whoever moves against the king is to be put to death. We see that in, I want to say it's 2 Samuel 1. Okay? Where Saul has been killed and some people are reporting that to David. And he said, you know, even though the king told you to kill him, you should have known better than to kill him. And he orders them to be killed. Okay? Okay, it says they are to be stoned or shot with arrows. Not a hand is to be laid on them. No person or animal is to be permitted to live, right, if they touch the mountain. This is another reason why a lot of these agnostics and these fake Christians and fake religious people are wrong in popular culture, where it is worse than putting a swastika in a synagogue to fume me. I am the most holy of holy things that's ever come to this world. God's spirit, then my soul, and then there's a huge gap before anything else. So it is a profound injustice. If Muslims were on their P's and Q's, they would be laying out America flat. Christians would be laying out America flat. Hell, agnostics would be stomping people out and blowing themselves up if they were truly in the know and truly understood what's at stake here and what it means for their offspring, that they will not ever know the purpose of life, and that there's a bunch of perverts who seek to cover up the fact that I came here in the first place and seek to twist these important ideas. So pay close attention, right? The lightning of God is far more powerful than all the warfare that ever has occurred in this world, ever, that is and ever will. Okay? So, what terrorists do to punish people is laughable compared to what is in store for the inhabitants of the earth for cheating me out of my right to lead them and their offspring. And we'll get to that. Okay. Only when the ram's horn sounds a long blast may they approach the mountain. Notice it's a ram's horn. Okay, and that goes back to various religious animals. Right, we have Amen, and it's not a coincidence they say Amen, and they refer to God or Jesus as Amen in Revelation. And you have the goats and the rams of Mendes and all kinds of ram ideas in various religious groups. Like Mars, his name scrambled is Rams, and Mars is where you get the English word martial arts, right? The arts of Mars, and martial is a play on words from marital. After Moses had gone down the mountain to the people, he consecrated them and they washed their clothes. Then he said to the people, "Prepare yourself for the third day, abstain from sexual relations."